MTOK News, bringing you information of the Christian world. I'm your national news anchor, Dustin Pfeiffer. And our first story tonight. A pastor in Oklahoma was killed after delivering a sermon telling his congregants to live for Jesus and witness as much as possible. The Oklahoma pastor, David Evans of the Baptist Church, wrote a sermon about his recent trip to Mexico and also focused heavily on Jesus' resurrection of Lazarus, saying that the priests wanted to kill Lazarus because it spreads the name of Jesus. And in quote to Christian Headlines, one of the last things the pastor said to his congregation, "We can live for eternity with him, and it's time for Christians to live victoriously. I'm not defeated. This world can give me the best and the worst they've got. And I know all about health problems and attacks on the body, attacks on finances, attacks on the spirit. Bring it, because I know who fights my battles." Evans' death is being used by multiple outlets to spread the good news by using his last message, his final sermon. In other news, a California megachurch fired its worship director for inappropriate actions taken online. This follows after lead pastor John Ortberg of the Menlo Church in California resignation after him allowing his son to work with minors while knowing that he was attracted to them. After allegations came to light, the church made a decision to have Michael, the worship director, put on leave, and then they called law enforcement to investigate the matter. The worship director is currently under investigation by law enforcement for inappropriate online behavior. He has since been terminated by the church for these actions. Congregants were encouraged to reach out to their pastor or a group called Zero Abuse if they had any concerns or information. There is some good news today. On March 26th of 2021, D.C. has lifted its city's limitation on houses of worship after a D.C. bishop filed a lawsuit in a district court. Previously, D.C. had a limitation going towards houses of worship that the capacity can no longer exceed 250 persons or 25%, whichever was less. The bishop filed a lawsuit against the city of the District of Columbia, and the district judge, Trevor Neal McFadden, issued an injunction against the city's ruling that it's inappropriate, that its approach to regulating houses of worship reflects a lack of adequate consideration for constitutional rights. Businesses in D.C. were not under that same restriction, quoting that the First Amendment rights were not being protected. D.C. now joins 37 states that no longer have a numerical or percentage cap on houses of worship. This is exciting news because Easter is around the corner, and now people are freely able to come in and worship still under a mask mandate and social distancing. However, the number is not restrictive so long as they are able to meet those qualifiers. Now we are going to go over to John with our international report.
All right. Well, thank you, Dustin, for those reports. We'll be sure to follow those up. And with that, let's head over now to your international reports for the week. So we are starting in Scotland, where there is freedom to worship. The High Court in Scotland has ruled that forced closing of churches during the pandemic is unconstitutional. While the rest of the United Kingdom allowed in-person church service, Scotland had made doing so a criminal offence, punishable by a fine of £10,000. The court, headed by Lord Braid, ruled that Christian worship is an integral part of society, and that the government cannot dictate what constitutes as worship. Religious leaders are overjoyed. It is hoped that this ruling will prevent similar situations in the future from happening. Certain unconstitutional attacks on Christian worship and services from happening. Then we're heading over to Canada, where we have an update on Pastor James Coates, who was released on March 22nd. We also would like to report that there is a GoFundMe page that has been set up to help Pastor Coates pay for his legal fees, and this was started shortly after he was arrested and has already raised upwards of $45,000. So again, Pastor Coates was released on March 22nd, And we are overjoyed to hear that, and he stood strong in his faith throughout the entire event. And we will continue to follow up with what comes next for Pastor Coates. Also, while we're staying in Canada, Trinity Bible Chapel of Waterloo, Ontario has been fined $83,000 for holding worship services attended by over 10 people. Now, they made this decision, and they knew they would be fined for doing so. The pastor is quoted as saying that $83,000 is a small price to pay for worshiping Christ. A church member also set up a GoFundMe page that has raised $44,700 already. Any money raised beyond the required $83,000 will go to help Trinity Bible Chapel. So we're happy that these Christians in Canada are doing something and that the congregations are supporting the works of their pastors, even though it may get them into trouble. We're going now to Algeria, where we do have some bad news. So if you remember, Hamid Saudad had his appeal case on March 22nd. Unfortunately, the courts have decided to go ahead with the 5-year prison sentence and fine. Again, his supposed crime was sharing a cartoon of Muhammad on Facebook. His attorney, Farid Kamasti, believes that the reason Hamid has received the maximum sentence is because he is a Christian. Now, we'd like to remind our viewers that for the longest time, Hamid had no idea he was under investigation. The case was started when a former work associate, who was an Islamic extremist, reported him in December of 2020. In January, Hamid was finally notified when the police came to his house. The next day, he was convicted. Now, these things don't bode well for Pastor Rakid and now Hamimi, who have their appeal case set for April 18th. Please continue to pray for them all. And unfortunately, these levels of persecution are continuing because we're going back to India now. So on March 19th, 2 nuns from the Congregation of the Sisters of the Sacred Heart were forcefully removed from a train by Hindu extremists. They were charged with transporting individuals for forced conversion. However, the 2 that they were with, these women already had identification that showed they were Christian. This didn't seem to matter, as the nuns were handed over to police and harassed and ridiculed as they were marched away. Local Christians had to work with police to resolve the issue. However, the next day, the 4 women had to leave the region disguised in civilian clothes. And I wish I could say this was the worst of it. It is not. But we have been following the reports in India lately. We're heading over to China to continue our reports, where even more house churches have been raided. So we've been reporting over the past few weeks the level of persecution that Christians have gone through in China and how it's been increasing. This has been sanctioned and carried out by the Chinese Communist Party. We've reported a few, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. The Communist Party has made it clear they will use every resource at their disposal to deal with those who do not subscribe to their ideology. Church services have been interrupted. Christian material has been confiscated. Christians have been arrested. Now, while some are released with just a warning or a fine, others are not so fortunate. Some have suffered imprisonment for their faith and refusal to yield to the Communist Party. For instance, we did talk about Pastor Wang Yi, who was arrested for his faith. We will continue to follow these stories as best we can as they develop. And now probably to the saddest story of the night. It's a big shift from how the reports began. In Pakistan, where we should meet Sajjad Masih, a 36-year-old Seventh-day Adventist, and he may face the death sentence. In 2011, Masih sent what is considered a controversial text message to a Muslim. We do not know the contents of that message. I do not, at least. In 2013, Masih was fined and sentenced to life in prison for a text message. Many have worked to overturn this outrageous sentence. Now, however, Masih may face the death sentence. The courts and individuals who support this claim that because he has defiled the name of Muhammad, that the death sentence is the only suitable punishment. Again, Masih is only 36 years old. We want people to continue to pray for him. And this comes on the same end as the week when the Pakistani government is talking about how safe the religious minorities within their country are. We do ask, please continue to pray for those and the persecutors. And lastly, we will end on the Abraham Accords. So if you remember a while back, we talked about the Abraham Accords. This is a treaty that will normalize relations between Israel and Bahrain, along with Israel and the United Arab Emirates. Now, along with easing some hostility, this also helps religious minorities in the region. So that's good. For years, Jews have been keeping a low profile in these regions. Now, however, they feel safer to practice their faith. And so in the countries of Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, the Jewish communities have formed the Association of the Gulf Jewish Communities. This is an organization that will promote unity and sharing of resources among the Jewish communities in the Gulf cooperation countries. This has also had a positive impact on Christians, as they too have felt safer in the region. However, we must remember that this is only the beginning for the region. Countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia continue to aggressively persecute both Christians and Jews with extreme measures. And so that brings your international report to an end. We'd like you to continue to pray for all these situations, from Pastor James Coates of Grace Life Church all the way to Sajjad Masih. And with that, we will now head to your hot topic of the week. I may have mispronounced that, but anyway, we will head over and talk about the topic of the week.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying tuned with us. We are now going to our breaking news. Now, John brought this one up to my attention, and they're back at it again. The baker that was sued went to court back in 2012 is now back in court again for a similar reason. John, explain a little more what's going on here.
Okay, so Colorado baker Jack Phillips was taken to court for refusing, in the first instance, to make a cake for a gay marriage. Now, it was a long process, and we won't go into detail about that because that one was resolved. But needless to say, he's back. He came out, he came out safe. He came out intact. Now he's back in court again for refusing to make a gender transition cake. Yes,
we're making a gender transition cake. Now the setup is what gets me, or what how this began really got to me. John, why don't you explain that portion of it?
Why don't you explain it? If it really got to you, why don't you explain it?
So, Scardina, who's a lawyer, heard about this court's decision about the gay wedding cake and his reasons for it being a religious ceremony, and it doesn't agree with his Christian beliefs. Well, the lawyer representing Miss Scardina, Paula Grayson, asked whether the call was a setup. She said no, it looked more about calling somebody's bluff. In the legal world, that's still a setup, no matter how you looked at it.
Yes. The thing that really gets to me is that this man is obvious. He's very outspoken about his Christian faith. He won't even make cakes for Halloween because in his Christian beliefs, Halloween is a pagan holiday. He doesn't celebrate. He won't even make cakes for that. And he's well within his rights to not violate his religious freedoms to do something that he doesn't support. So to us, this really just seems like a setup. This seems like they knew. There are plenty of other bakers that people can go to, but they intentionally go to Jack Phillips because they know he's going to say no, it seems like to me.
Yeah. Purposefully, everyone knows that for Christians, we are very strict most of us are strict with our beliefs. And something about glorifying gender transition or a homosexual wedding, we're not angry when those things happen. But
we
we do
don't
not.
support
But we do not willfully participate in that because it goes directly against what we've been taught. And so this is a literal attack. And the Colorado Civil Rights Commission has been called out on it by the Supreme Court, saying that you are extremely anti-religious. There has been, this was back in 2018 when the Supreme Court made that decision, nothing further about whether businesses can refuse on religious grounds. However, Phillips since has sued Colorado government for its crusade to crush him by pursuing this complaint. However, both the state and Phillips decided to drop the cases under a settlement. However, Scardina, it was still allowed to pursue a lawsuit against Phillips. But the General Secretary of Colorado said that both sides, state and Phillips, have agreed that it's be everyone's best interest to just drop the case.
Yes. You know, as we've said, we don't support these things. But if you're going to do them, there's plenty of other people to go to.
Right.
It's like I told Dustin earlier. That would be like me as a Christian going to a Muslim baker and telling them, you need to bake me a cake that talks about Jesus. I'm not going to do that. Yes, I know Jesus is the risen Lord and God, but I'm not going to attack a Muslim and tell them they have to go against their beliefs. Now, you know, because who is that helping? Who is that converting? Who is that helping? I would much rather have a faith discussion with them, which different topic, but I'm not going to attack them. And then when they refuse for obvious reasons, I'm not going to come after them with a lawsuit. I just think that that's wrong. Exactly.
And so I think that covers all for our top news. Stay tuned for our media report.
I'll be doing the media report for the week. And I'll be listing off the top 10 Christian songs for the week. And at number 10, we have Say I Won't by Mercy Me. At number 9, we have Anything Can Happen featuring Sarah Perez, by Mark Crowder. Number 8 is Less Like Me by Zach Williams. Number 7 is Hold On To Me by Lauren Daigle. Number 6 is Battle Belongs by Phil Willem. Number 5 is Good God Almighty by Crowder, the radio version. Number 4 is Help Is On The Way, Maybe Midnight by Toby Mac. Number 3 is He Is by Crowder. Number 2 is Hold On To Me by Lauren Daigle. And number 1 this week for the Christian songs is Jiren featuring Chandler Moore and Naomi Rain. By the way, sorry if I butcher those names. By Elevation Worship and Maverick City Music. And now, thank you. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you, Christopher, for the media report. And now we will go to the organization of the week. And this week's organization is Convoy of Hope. This is a fairly young organization, only founded in 1994. However, they do incredible work. They provide food and other humanitarian aid to impoverished communities, as well as disaster relief. They are based out of Missouri, if I'm reading my writing correctly. Consider making a donation or volunteering there today. This does incredible work, like we've said. It's always encouraging to read about people doing this. They are a faith-based organization. This organization was suggested by a friend, and if you have an organization you'd like to see featured, please leave the name down in the comments section down below. We love hearing about different Christian organizations to show off. And with that, this brings your segment of MTOK News to a close. We want to thank you all for joining us this week. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can join us every week, every Saturday, for more reports and other content throughout the week. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day, and God bless you.